fresh cup of co.
I do, although it wasn't fresh because, it was brewed at 6 a.m., but it's still
Don't you
warm.
just have that hooked up to an IV drip or something?
I should.
Yeah.
Totally should.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine on Teams yesterday. He was like, I am super caffeinated right now. Overly caffeinated. And he was just buzzing the whole conversation that was like an hour long. Oh, man. Yeah, I think that we were kind of overcompensating for a lack of stimulation or something.
Probably.
Oh, man. Yeah. So you want to talk about this Twitter thread that
Absolutely.
I'm likely leaving structural engineering, a thread. So this is a Twitter thread. There's a little bit of a caveat right in there, right in that title, right? Likely leaving.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think it's these decisions aren't forever. But this was a Twitter thread started by M. Claire, who is an engineer. And I think that based on some info that's been shared, it looks like in Los Angeles, structural engineer with some complaints.
Yeah, I mean, thread is certainly a good way to explain it because there was a lot of thread pulling after the rant. And I don't even want to call it a rant. I just think it was
like a series of observations, right?
bit of soul searching of the observation of, hey, this is what I see, even though they were specifically talking about it being part of the engineering world. It most certainly is something that crosses all bits of the architectural and engineering world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It resonated with, I'm sure, old timers, new timers, any timers.
Any
really.
timers, yeah. I was thinking maybe we'll just set this up, just let everybody know that we'll put a link to the beginning of the thread in the show notes, and you can sign up for the show notes at archispeakpodcast.com on the right-hand side of the webpage. You can get that emailed to you, or you can, in your podcast player, just check out the show notes. And then as of this recording, there are 200 likes, 43 retweets, and 28 quotes. So it did kind of spark a pretty good-sized discussion after the fact, and I don't know that we'll have time to get into that today, but I just wanted to put all that out there before we kind of jump into some of the main points that she mentioned, and also, like, as Cormac just said, similarities to, let's just stick with our profession. But yeah, I think it's definitely, it resonated for sure. I think it resonated with a lot of people, and like kudos to at M. Claire for just like putting this out there, because I think a lot of people won't even go that far, right, to put this kind of thing out there.
Right. And the thing that I liked about this soul searching of why they're likely leaving the structural engineering world and why many young architects feel very much the same way is beautifully highlighted in her experience in the structural engineering world that is absolutely step for step similar to the architectural world.
Totally lockstep.
In the worry that I have with everything that she had highlighted is this in engineering is everything that I see in architecture, that, what we have here is we have the inability, there's a multitude of things, but one that she was, highlighting that we have talked about, in the struggles, especially now in the COVID timeframe of things, is mentoring and
or lack
thereof, and being able to capture or captivate, let's not say capture, captivate people into a love affair with the profession from the get-go. And we're just not doing that. When people in the threads down below, when, people are talking about, their own experience, or here's one specifically where they were like, I think it's so important that graduates and students understand the reality in which they are entering.
Yep.
And I'm assuming the reality of the profession that they're entering. And the thing about that is that that's actually more daunting.
That's a
in a way.
Sad statement.
It totally is.
Yep.
Because what they're doing is basically saying, you don't know the shit you're getting into.
Right. Yeah, and honestly, like, to me, this is a letter that leadership really needs to pay attention to. And I don't just mean like a leader of a firm. I mean like the leadership of this profession. And, I think that comes at many different levels. I'm not in any way saying that is a top-down kind of a thing. Leaders know who they are. Leaders are people who are willing to do something about this. And for the leaders that are not willing to do something about this, you really need to take note that this is a sentiment expressed widely across the profession. I believe, as you just kind of laid out, she did start off by mentioning the lack of mentorship, the
Mm-hmm.
lack of opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much disparity between kind of the path that people are pointed down in their educational cycle of their career versus their actual professional cycle of their career. Everybody's talked about the cycle of paying your dues, and you've got to go through these different hoops and spend your time and work your way up and all, and basically, to me, if you really step back and take a look at this, there very much has been, and we touched on this in the last episode, talking about kind of the neutering that happens upon many individuals, too many, or yeah, I guess too many individuals within the profession. You just kind of become numb to it. It becomes a clock in, clock out, day to day, no passion, passionless kind of pursuit. And it is, and she mentions the assembly line, right? And
Yeah.
that kind of aspect of it. And we do definitely see that, and with students coming out where they have a certain set of skills with technology, and she touches on that in the thread as well, as far as like how much aptitude and competency it takes to run the technology that we're using on our projects. And because of that, there's like a pigeonholing that happens, right? And I think a lot of firms look at students as operators, not creators.
Right.
And so there's a lot going on here. And again, like, I guess to kind of bring this back to where I started, was I think this is totally on leadership to create an environment that these people who have the potential to be passionate about our chosen profession to thrive within. And I don't see that necessarily happening. I definitely don't see that happening widely.
Yeah. And one of the things I was kind of hoping that you would touch on, and you did a little bit, and I might want to ask you to, in just your current role at your firm, touch on, and we've talked about it so many times about the lack of innovation in the software that we use, that we're basically turning it over to somebody else to figure out how we work more efficiently.
Yep.
And they're like, well, yeah, I see what you guys are doing. And, I think that there's a way for us to improve on that so that we can be more creative and we can do better work and do different things. And why are we constantly continuing to, basically, we treat software as, the evolution of the pencil. It's like, okay, here's another way for us to draw all of this stuff.
Right.
And it's not, here is another way for us to innovate or elevate or, like alleviate. And these are the things that I just don't understand why we don't embrace those. And you had sent, a follow-up text from somebody else who basically was a programmer looking for, or an architect or an engineer, I'm not sure what his background is, that is looking for programmers in the architecture and engineering fields, not in our field, to help innovate the profession rather than outsourcing it to people who don't have an idea about how we work and how we think and how we do things. Isn't this what the advantage of having the rebellious youth come in and see how we're doing things and say, oh, okay, I can learn from you in the more analog way of thinking for how to do calculations for spans and my load path diagrams and all of these other things that the structural engineer is asking the junior structural engineers to do. And those things, you can pass along that kind of information or that kind of experience to everybody one way, shape. But it's how do you actually do your work so that when you are passing that information along, that it's not just, hey, let's, do it the old fashioned way and it takes us forever to do it. And it helps, the way that we're doing it can create conflicts and constraints that otherwise we could be working around so that we can actually do a better job at what we're doing. And so that we can actually, because you see this whole kind of notion of, most people are like, oh, well, this is how we've done it. And I don't know how many times you've heard, whether it's in the construction side of things or the architecture side of things or engineering side of things, this is how we've done it.
Yeah.
Not always the right way. And you've done it this way, but now you're asking people to do it a lot faster, which means that you're not getting efficiencies out of them. You're not getting any productivity out of them that's going to make you more profitable or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, That's a frustrating experience for sure. And the video that you're referencing it's posted on YouTube and it's on the Bad Monkeys team site if you check out their website. But basically, it's you need to come work with us if you fit this criteria, and it's basically kind of speaking directly to many of the points in this Twitter thread that and not on purpose. Like, this is just who the Bad Monkeys want to hire. And to me, we'll put a link to this one in the show notes as well. But to me, this is the kind of recruiting video that every firm should be striving to make.
Right.
Which shows and it asks for the passion. I mean, you're looking for the people who want to make things better, who want to change things. And yeah, I mean, we do treat the latest technology as just a sharper version of the same pencil, I think, in many regards. We are asking for things to go faster and not necessarily understand them. I think one of the sayings that I've really latched onto in the last year is go slow to go fast. Really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you can fly when you get to the point where you need to, instead of going fast just to go fast and making a mess and breaking things and then having to pick up all the pieces over and over again. I mean, that we know where that leads as well. So kind of going slow to go fast is a great way to think about it. And it's also a great way to approach new technology, especially. Really understand what you're doing so that you can leverage it, right? It's a tool. You need to apply leverage with it. And I think I love some of the things that he says in this video. Again, link to it in the show notes. But he talks about that he's looking for somebody who is mad about the way things are. He wants somebody who's dissatisfied. He wants somebody who's pissed off with the software that we're forced to use because it sucks, right? He wants to find a passionate person who wants to do something about it. And I love his kind of call to action. And I think that this is sorely lacking, again, kind of bringing it back to my earlier point with architectural firm leadership today, which is you have to create an attractive thing that people want to be a part of. And that can be the firm culture. It can be the type of work you do. It can be how you affect your communities. It can be all of those things. And it probably should be all of those things, because if you want to keep somebody, something that she mentions in her Twitter God, I just can't say it. Twitter thread, is there's a lot of jumping around, and because there is a lot of dissatisfaction in the types of work that people are doing. And again, they're kind of getting pigeonholed into certain types of work and not getting the opportunities to grow or to find something that they really love in the profession that they really can latch onto. Rather, they're just kind of working as a worker on the assembly line.
Yeah, and I think to just go one step further, it's not just necessarily the dissatisfied in the work that they're doing, it's how they work and how that particular firm does their work and approach is the approach and the growth of that particular person. And I think that's what you meant. I guess I'm just mentally kind of like expanding upon it, just thinking that, the way, I kind of had made comment about capital A architecture and, how it's in a way it kind of angers me that people think that one architecture is better than the other. And I think, across the board, and here's where I go up on a weird little mini rant, that across the board, any architecture is great architecture, as long as you are bringing passion and a thought to it that is going to elevate it beyond, just here's four walls and here's a roof. And it's just because any contractor can do something like that. Anybody who doesn't have any real skill can basically make four walls and stuff. And what we're trying to do is elevate anything that we touch to be, better. So I think, the type of work that people do is one thing, but the way that they do it, I think really, truly is, maybe at the heart of, her Twitter feed is we are working in such an archaic fashion in a period of time when we should be elevating the way we work, not just how, what we work on, but how we actually work and how we actually do those things. So that in the case of like what we are living through right now, where everybody's working remotely and things like that, the tools that we use to actually get the work done sometimes aren't quite the right tools. And if there are more innovative tools out there that can make us work better, more collaborative, and things like that, like what Bad Monkeys is trying to do, will actually help us improve not only what we work on, but how we actually work together on it, regardless of where we're at and what we're doing and things like that. And so it goes back to that initial statement that is that we don't do enough to captivate people into having this love affair with the profession right out of the box. And we just, for some reason, we aren't telling them that, okay, understand that there are going to be some pitfalls. There's going to be a little bit of ups and downs, but overall, though, what I really want you to do is really enjoy this profession and how you actually work within this profession, and be as much of an active contributor to the elevation of the profession, rather than just kind of just say, okay, here's your place on the assembly line. You're going to be in charge of bumpers.
Yeah, I think there's good news and bad news, and I'm not really sure which one of these fits which one of these, because you're going to have to figure this out. But the good news is there's, she mentions wanting to potentially leave structural engineering to go and do building with code. And the good news there is there's definitely companies that want people to do that. There's ones who see all of the inefficiencies in the crap that the professionals are dealing with on a day-to-day basis and want to do something about it. The bad news is it's not the companies themselves who are doing that work who are going to do something about it. It's these other ones. And I think that is bad for the profession. Especially when you do have this talent wanting so badly to make a difference, and they have to leave your profession to do that. I mean, obviously this is a side lane to the profession, and they could of course come back to the profession, but my guess is they don't want to come back to this profession. They want to come back to a better profession, and that's why they're going down this side lane. So to me, like again, the leadership dropping the ball here with creating an avenue for people to do this within the companies, and this is really like at the core of my work that I'm doing in my group and in our offices, is to create it within the confines of our enterprise. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is. And I want to do it in our profession so that we can attract the best talent in our profession. I don't want to have to lure somebody back from something else that they might have already tasted and potentially enjoyed and would never come back to. Right. So I want to give that opportunity right here, right now, for the people who are right here, right now. And to me, that is what more firms need to be doing. We are never going back to hand drawing ever, people. We're not. Got to accept it.
Dang it. But I mean, you're absolutely right. And so, I mean, you and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, that the only real way to enact a change is from within. Start that revolution from inside the profession, whether it's starting small and it's inside your firm, and having them be rethink that, okay, the only, let's liken it to the auto industry, that the auto industry doesn't go out and ask other people how to innovate in their profession. They're the ones who know how to make cars. And so they're the ones who spend lots and lots of money in research and development to improve upon the car industry, whether it's through racing or anything else. I mean, there's innovations that they partake in that they're helping control the direction of their own industry. And the problem is that we, for some reason, feel like there's a big disconnect between innovating in our profession and the tools that it takes to innovate in our profession. And they shouldn't be, oh, well, we'll go and get, we'll go and ask this person to, make this tool for us so that we can go ahead and get better. It's, let's make that tool because we know what that tool is supposed to be to make us better than the people who we would go and try to explain it to them. It's always this email. It's like, well, I could explain to you guys exactly what it is that I'm trying to say, or I can actually just do it and show you, and then we can all be better at understanding what it is that we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And it just, for some reason, I don't understand why we disconnect ourselves from innovation. I mean, we shouldn't have, I don't want to pick on the technology companies that supply us with, but I mean, do these companies really, truly, I mean, we should have, like, every architecture firm on the board, or like let's just say the large firm roundtable that exists in the AIA, they should also have a large firm roundtable at every one of these software companies to basically interface and talk to them, or have direct input from the profession on how exactly we use the tools and what we need and what type of innovation, so that they can kind of keep pushing forward. Because I think you had talked about Revit being like a couple decade old software. All we're doing is just like tweaking it but not changing it. What are these great innovations?
Slanted
Okay.
wall.
Slanted walls. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. I don't know why we have divorced ourselves from taking the responsibility to innovate our profession.